This is TWiT.
All right, now that we've gotten ourselves hungry, let's talk about some red meat, I guess, for lack of a better transition there, to talk about Ross Ulbricht, who was convicted last week, of all 7 charges that he was indicted on. The jury had very little trouble in finding that he was indeed Dread Pirate Roberts and convicting him as the mastermind of Silk Road. So I wanted the chance to bring that up. We didn't get the chance to talk about it in either of our other 2 recent shows. So it is noteworthy. I think there were people who wondered, how the evidentiary issues were going to play out in that case and whether the government was going to be able to use information that it had obtained on servers belonging to Ulbricht. Ulbricht's defense team never really raised that Fourth Amendment challenge in an effective way, made a decision that it would be detrimental to him to actually have to say, well, yes, we owned those servers, and so therefore we can assert that they should not have been unreasonably searched. That may have tied their hands a bit. But regardless of what happened here is Ulbricht is going down. So, Jim, any thoughts on this or the state of the dark web in the wake of Silk Road?
Certainly not an expert in these sorts of prosecutions. What it brings to mind for me as an IP lawyer and an IP scholar is the real importance of keeping criminal law and civil law separate. If it turns out that a guy is running an online anonymous, drug distribution network, I have a lot less sympathy for him. And, the means by which the prosecution and criminal investigators get their hands on information are and should be very different from the way one gets one's hands on information in a civil suit. But, there have been pushes to make copyright law, for example, a lot more of a criminal law matter than has been in the past. The Net Act from the late 90s was maybe the first real salvo in that direction. And, when it comes to the government doing the job of copyright owners by making a case criminal rather than civil, then I start to have a lot more misgivings about the investigative techniques that might have been used here.
All right, Robert, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I think that this is just a really fun case in the sense of, just the absolute orgy of evidence that they stumbled upon when they caught him on the laptop and logged in to the master account and all these various things. But, for somebody who's not engaged in criminal activity, I think that what this really brings up as a question is, where do your servers live? This is something that I've increasingly seen in a lot of different contexts where as we talked about earlier, as the Internet of Things becomes more prevalent, as more services are provided through cloud computing systems and more companies move their IT operations outside of the walls of their building and out into data centers and out into to other places, who has access, who can search there, under what jurisdiction will you fall, particularly if you, say, have a data center that's located outside the U.S., or if you're a European company, maybe you have one that's located in the U.S. Does that violate European privacy law? There are all sorts of issues that come up as data migrates out into the cloud, and I think this is just a really interesting case to kind of put that in perspective. The idea that somebody could get a search warrant on your servers that are located somewhere that you may not have in your possession. You may not actually know that the servers exist, or even if you know that they exist, you don't know exactly where they are. It's a lot of questions that legitimate players need to take into context, and so this isn't just a question for the criminal masterminds of the internet, but probably something that a lot of companies should be paying attention to.
Sarah, what do you think about the notion that obviously we have a longstanding system of justice in our country where unless there's a darn good reason to put something under seal, everything that happens is publicly available. When I read about Ulbricht's conviction, I just see in my head all of the other dark web operators of drug trafficking and other illegal black market good trafficking sites taking notes and making sure that they now have a handbook for what to do better so as not to get caught. Do you see any solution to that?
I mean, I certainly don't think the solution would be to make the litigation not public, if that's what you're implying.
Not really. I'm wondering if there is a solution.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a solution. Probably not. I mean, I was thinking one of the articles that you put in the notes about this case mentioned the idea that maybe this case in some ways backfires for law enforcement because it gives publicity to the dark web, because so many people don't even know that it exists or that it's out there. And so it could actually lead to more people using it and going there. And I thought that was kind of an interesting takeaway. And that's probably what you're getting at here. And I don't know. I just don't know that there is a solution to that. If there is, I'm not creative enough to come up with it.
Yeah, I always feel like when we read and discuss these kinds of cases that we're sort of talking about things that have happened in the past, and in the real world, things have moved on, and these kinds of sites are already, out and learning from the mistakes that have been made. And as you said, perhaps the point that one of those authors made, getting greater market share because of the publicity.